Welcome to the HMO Property Show. By investors, for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing. Whether you're a seasoned investor, a new landlord, or just curious about property investing, this is the podcast for you. Sponsored by the Co-Living Collective, your trusted partner in creating vibrant and sustainable shared living experiences. Visit us at colivingcollective.com.au to learn more.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. I'm your host, Neil Gibb, and today's episode is a little bit different, and it's not something that I've done before, and to be honest, it's something that I might never do again, because this episode is a live coaching call that I did with my mentor, Mr. Brett Jones. If you've been following me on social media, you'll know that Brett and his beautiful wife, Marie, have had huge impact on my life and Joe's life. And, when Brett and Marie talk, I always listen and I always action the information that they give me as well. And I recorded this coaching call with him, and I thought to myself, I listened back to it and I thought to myself, there's a lot of cool nuggets of gold in this episode which people could action. So it's not specifically property related, but it's life related. And if you listen to this podcast because you want to improve your life in some way, shape or form, then getting harmony and peace when you've got kids and a chaotic life and you sometimes feel there's not enough hours in the day, then maybe this podcast is something for you. So I hope you get something from it. And one last thing before I let you go, if you just check in the show notes of this podcast now, you'll see a link to a survey. And what we're seeing is our numbers are incredibly high for the podcast, but we don't have a clue who listens. So if you could do me a massive favor and just it'll take you 3-4 minutes just to fill out the survey, just so we can get some sort of feedback on who listens to the podcast, right? And don't worry, you don't have to give us your name, your phone number or your email address. It's nothing like that. It's just some really simple questions, which will take you a couple of minutes to fill out, and it'll just help us understand our audience better so that we can tailor the information or the content that we put out there for the listeners. So thank you in advance for completing the survey, and I hope you enjoy this live coaching call with myself and my mentor, Mr. Brett Jones. Hey, Brett.
So, how are you? Good to see you. So, what's the purpose of the coaching call today? What can I help you with?
Oh, I would say some of the problems I'm coming up with at the minute is, as we've discussed previously, as much as I love these kids, mate, they're proving extremely challenging at certain times, right? And if I think about what I like, I like things tidy and in order. I'm not a big fan of noise, and I really like my sleep. And then 3 things right now are all upside down because of the kids. So, and it's impacting me in other areas of my life, Brett. It's, when I don't have a good night's sleep, sometimes it's a struggle to get to the gym. And if I don't go to the gym, I feel like I haven't done my morning routine, which then flows me nicely into work.
Yep, totally. So we've discussed many times how important it is to get all aspects of your life in order if you want to be successful, either in business or creating wealth. Because most people, when they're tackling those sorts of things, ignore the fact that a large portion of your life is outside of business. Yes, you spend maybe, 60, 70% of your week in business, but that area of outside emotionally influences, as you're describing, in a big way, into the business and into yourself personally, because we are the business. And whether that's you're a solopreneur and you're just doing, say, flips on property, or even if you're just an investor in property, those decisions that you make, you might think you're making them from a logical point of view, but all the research clearly shows us that our decision making is emotionally affected. And many universities in the United States, as an example, have a complete field of study around how our emotions affect our financial decision making. And it's evident that if, certainly in my own life, not getting the family side of things, love, relationships, parenting right, has a profound impact in terms of decisions that we make, and ultimately, whether we're successful in business or not. So I totally get what you're saying. So let's just tackle perhaps them one at a time. So when you said like you totally love the kids, which is a given, of course, as parents we do, but equally we come into marriage and relationship and being a parent with a certain level of skills, generally from the culture, from what we've seen other people around us do, Neil, but also what we got from watching our parents in terms of how they parented us. And naturally, we use that information and those skills and those emotions to then pass it on. Some of that stuff's good. Some of it is maybe, not so good.
I've definitely got some bad traits, probably from my father as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. And we all do. Then it's a question of, okay, well, how do I not pass those skills on to my children, the bad ones? The
Yeah.
good ones, sure, we want to keep all that stuff and use them. But by now, I'm sure you must have at times heard yourself speaking to the kids with an echo from the past, right? Of exactly how your father spoke to you. And then,
100%.
yeah.
100%. And sometimes I'm halfway through saying it and I stop because I hear
Yes,
what's coming out.
yes, we've all done that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, how could I possibly use that when I hated it so much being passed to me? And what do you find the most frustrating with the kids?
I'd say it's the noise. Right now, Freddie's going through this stage where he's screaming a lot. If
Hmm.
he doesn't get his own way, if he doesn't get fed what he wants, if
Yes,
he's tired, and I get in at the end of the day at 5 o'clock when they're getting tired and they're getting hungry, they're ready for feed and ready for bed, and I walk into just screams and
hell hour,
he'll
hell
fly
hour.
past me on the bike and it just and like oh, just carnage, and then
Yeah,
there's mess everywhere because the kids and they've pulled everything out the toy box and
of course.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So you go from like an ordered work environment into literally chaos.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's going to be frustrating for any person, right? But certainly as a man, you're going to find it distracting because we tend to be very single focused, which you can do really well at work, right? It's an ideal environment to be very single focused. Then you walk home and there's kids over here, there's another one over here, there's your wife there that wants attention, the dog probably wants attention as well. And there's shit everywhere. So it's like, well, how do I deal with that? Well, I think anything in life you've got to break down into simple principles. Because when you look at something and it doesn't matter what it is, there's a lot of moving components to it. It literally becomes complicated to work out emotionally. So maybe I can focus on one thing, which is, okay, I'm going to give my wife attention. Meanwhile, the kids are screaming and there's chaos going on in the house. So the first principle is with children, as children ourselves, we need two things. One is love, and that gets demonstrated to us in various ways. There's the classic Gary Chapman five love languages. And so some of that's going to be through words of affirmation, giving of gifts, um, touch, quality time, etc. And each of the kids is going to have a different love language.
Mm.
Are likely, as children, they have the same one. So as a parent, you have to work out which is which. For me, with my two youngest kids, raising them, Chase is much more touch orientated, whereas River growing up, even as a young girl, was very much like no. And you had to pick your times when she would come up to me and sit next to me when we were watching TV or having a conversation or whatever and snuggle up to me. If I went to her, she'd move away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can take that, obviously the wrong way. So later on, as you got to like a mid-teen years, we would go out for, say, a walk down the street or something, and she would come up and put her arm through my arm. Now that was like extremely rare, but that was the only time I got touch, which is for me my primary language. For her, it's more quality time and words of affirmation that she requires. And so with Freddie and Flossie, they're going to have completely different love language. You've got to work it out.
Mm.
The other thing they need, we all need, is attention. And attention means to be noticed. And it's helpful if you think about it from the point of view as a young human being. If we don't get attention, which is why babies cry, right? And there are different, and we now know and have studied scientifically, there are different levels of crying. So some crying is real, I'm in pain crying. Other crying is I want attention. I want a drink. I can't yet verbalize that. But we now can clearly see, like 5, 6 month old children can actually sign as to what they want.
Yeah.
So we're all aware at that age what we need. We don't have the vocabulary or the voice cords yet to say it. So how do I get attention? I yell, or I cry, or I scream. That's going to get me attention.
Mm.
Now, there are two types of children to make it very easy to understand kids. One is um, an externally referenced child or an internally referenced child, meaning the internally referenced one is very difficult to influence. The external one is very much looking for validation and approval. And so they're looking to be the good little boy or good little girl. They'll be the cute one. Yeah. And they'll get all the attention by doing that. The other one tends to be more boisterous, more internally referenced. So I'm going to rely more on what I know than what people tell me. So they're very difficult to influence. And I'm thinking by the smile you've got on your face, I think you can recognize which is which, right?
100%, 100. As you're saying it, I'm like, and Freddie is just the carbon copy of me, right? So he's his love language is quality time, and he's
Yes.
externally influenced as well, which we picked up before because you've said to me, I'm extremely coachable. And
Yes.
he's the same. He just gets that external validation from me, knowing that he's got my attention.
Yes. And he would be, as you're rightly pointing out, modeling you. So he's looking at you going, okay, what is it to be a man? I'm a little boy. I'm going to become a man. What do I need to do? And this is obviously not logical. It's unconscious and it's an emotional level. So he's looking at dad going, okay, so who is this guy? And dad's fairly high energy. Yep.
Yep.
He's fairly high energy. He's quite intense about things.
Mm.
If you look at Freddie, he's pretty much both of those things, right? He's high energy and he's pretty much intense about stuff.
Yeah.
And so when dad gets home, if I want instantaneous attention from dad, given I've been with mum all day, right? And dad's my hero, what's the easiest way if I'm both of those two things to get attention?
To match him.
Yeah, I'm just going to go high energy, right? I'm just going to jump on my bike, scream around the room, yell. So the solution to get back to a world of calm is the moment you walk into that room, you go straight up to him. Well, you say, sorry, you greet your wife first.
Yes, first and foremost. Yep.
Well, that's right, just to make sure that that level's covered. And when you've done that, then you turn straight to him and give him that attention immediately. Pick him up, chuck him up in the air, give him a boisterous, um, which, okay, there's personalities, but as young boys, they're much more into boisterous play. All the studies clearly show that compared to girls. So you want to give him that boisterous interaction so he gets that body contact. And then immediately turn to Flossie as well. Yeah, and give her whatever her love language is, which is probably going to be more, talking, cuddling, picking up, etc., and working out what she actually needs.
Yeah.
And if you give that attention immediately you get home, what you'll find is there's much more calm in your
Gotcha.
world,
Yeah.
which is exactly what you're seeking, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you don't get that, and the night is literally chaos, and there's kids to bathe and books to read, and getting food in their mouth, and then finally getting them to bed. By the time you do that, one, there's very little time for you and Joe to spend together, which impacts your connection.
It's impacting connection now, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it would be. It would be. And men don't tend to think that that's important in terms of business or investment, but it absolutely is.
Mm.
Because if we don't have that connection there, then what we're going to feel like, even if we don't acknowledge it to ourselves, is we're doing it on our own.
Mm.
And that has an impact on our decision making.
Okay. So
We have this, as you're well aware, right, that two is more powerful than one. What we mean by that is getting the different opinion from the opposing sex is very important. So even if I was talking to a woman right now, it would be very important for her to have input from her husband, whether he's got technical expertise in what she's doing or not, because it's a different perspective. And we're meant to be on the same page together, moving together to create something. So the business, our philosophy, as again you're aware, is our philosophy on business is that the business is there to support the family. It's not there for us to go, wow, look at me, look what I've achieved, look how successful I am. Yeah, that's not its purpose. Sure, we can use it for that, but the downside of doing that is a downside we don't want to experience.
Yeah.
Because when ego gets carried away with you, there is a big downside to that. And people think there's not. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of role models in the world now that have a lot of ego, and we tend to look at them and go, "Oh, wow, they're successful despite that." That's not actually true. When you actually track a person's life properly and you see what the impacts are behind the scenes, they're quite profound. And as you well know, I've spent over 30 years studying people's lives, studying what strategies work in what areas of life and which ones don't. And I've experienced that in my own life, both in wealth creation and in the property area as well.
Mm. And that's why we have these conversations because I need somebody like you that's got this experience. And, as individuals, we have blind spots, right? And the things that you're telling me there, now that you've told me them blind spots are being removed. And I'll go in the house in a different frame of mind tonight as well.
Yeah, I think it also helps. Again, I'm referencing and like pointing out more, talking to you as a guy, because the way a woman would view this problem is going to be very, very different to the way that you and I would view the problem.
Yeah.
So for us as men, again, we're very destination focused. And again, this is not an opinion. There's scientific research to show that's a fact, even in terms of, where our eyes track. We're always looking for that destination. Women, they're much more around the journey to get to a place and experiencing that journey. So if we walk in and now we've got a framework that we can use to address the problem, it's going to be far easier for us. It's going to put us in a better state of mind and hence a better place when we go back to work tomorrow. So managing our state and how we approach something is critical. And that means gaining skills in each of those areas, such as parenting.
Hmm. So what do we do? What do we do around the mess side of things then? Because that for me, I like everything in its place. I like everything nice and neat and tidy. For me, if there's mess and things feel unorganized, it feels chaotic, and I need to fix that before I can sit down and focus on what I need to do.
Yeah. So you've got two options there. You either employ someone to take care of that problem or you do it.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you walk in and say to your wife, oh, let's tidy up. And she's going to be like, are you kidding me? Like after everything I've been through today, handling these two small ankle biters, and you want me to help you tidy up? Are you nuts? That's going to be the typical response
Yeah.
from a woman, whether she says it externally or not. Internally, that's what she's going to be doing. So you can make that choice and do that, but that strategy is really not the best strategy. The other strategy is, okay, yeah, I'm exhausted, but I'm going to put in that final sprint, increase my capacity to handle this and go around and tidy everything up and have a system for doing that. Whether in the lounge room you have some toy boxes in the corner and you just run around, pick up all the crap, put it in there, and then you start the evening routine, which is generally going to be connecting with everybody, getting dinner sorted out, getting food inside of them, either getting them bathed and ready for bed, reading, spending some time with them, one-to-one time, then getting them into bed. And then, of course, the routine of them getting out of bed, back and forth.
This is the problem, right? Because now he keeps getting out of bed, but he gets out of bed before he's due to wake up. And this is the problem that I'm having with the sleep. And we spoke about this at the Warrior Man Crucible event.
Yes.
So we're supposed to have a sleep consultant come in last week, and unfortunately she had a relative pass away in her family and she had to cancel on us. And for the last few nights now, we put him to bed at 7:15, 7:30, and by 8 o'clock he's woke up, and then he wakes up every 30 minutes until we get into bed, and then he gets
Mhm.
into our bed with us.
Okay. So that's an anxiety. There's always a reason behind any behavior any human being does. As
Mm,
bizarre as the behavior might be, there's always a reason. So in this case, there's an anxiety there that needs to be addressed. So he's obviously wanted to come into your bed because he's feeling anxious about being alone.
mm,
So one of the strategies that I'm sure she'll show you is to put him into bed and stay just outside the bed. So the only reason he's waking up after half an hour is that he's worried. So if you put him to bed and go and check on him in approximately half an hour and you see him wake up, then it's you gently put him back into bed and tell him, Freddie, you're going to be okay. Daddy's just here. And you gradually ease your way out to the door. Yep. And then you go around the corner so he can't see you. He'll get out of bed. You turn around, put him back into bed. Reassure him again, Daddy's right here. I'm not going anywhere. And the same procedure, you go around the corner. Now, he may do that on the first night 4 or 5 times, but eventually he'll get used to the fact, the conditioned response is going to be, Daddy's actually just around the corner. I can go to sleep. And that's where we want to get them to, right? The belief that you're always going to be there. Now, that can be very frustrating, can take up to like a week, sometimes more of doing that to actually get them there. But if you're consistent with it, it's always the same response. It doesn't matter the child, they will learn that they're safe. And there's no longer any need to get out of bed. Because the last thing you want as a parent, it's tough enough anyway. The last thing you want is your child in bed with you.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, especially because he flips around in the middle of the bed as well. So like you
Yes,
wake up
you put
three or
your
four
feet
times.
in. Absolutely, same experience for any parent, right? They're going to put their feet in your back. They're going to be kicking you in bed,
Yeah,
and you just don't get a good night's sleep. So if you go to work the next day and you've had broken sleep, you're not in a good mood. Your brain's not at full capacity. There's a whole bunch of other sleep reasons we could discuss, but the bottom line is you're not going to be making good decisions.
correct. I actually I woke up the other morning at 3 o'clock because he was in the bed, woke up, foot in my face, my mind started spinning. I thought to myself, I'm just going to get out of bed and go read a book, which I did. And then I went to the gym, and then it got to like 8, 9 o'clock, and then I started to feel tired. And I
Yeah.
had team meetings lined up that day. And to start the meeting, I actually said, look, guys, I'm not feeling myself. I'm going to apologize in advance for anything that comes out of my mouth that shouldn't. So don't take it personal. I'm just in a bit of a bad headspace because of lack of sleep. And everyone was like, fair play, fam. Thanks for bringing it up and being so honest.
Yep, yep. But it's true, right? So if you're only getting 5 or 6 hours sleep during the night, that's going to happen.
Mm.
So making a decision with Joe, talking to her about it, and again, some women will approach this from a different perspective, which is, I actually like the kids being in bed. I want to have that closeness with them. I want to have that relationship with them. Some people might say, well, it's actually good having the child in the bed with you. In ancient times, that's what we did. But this is not ancient times.
Nah.
And the lifestyle that we have now is very different to that lifestyle, is the reality. The structure of life we've created now is very, very different to what millions of years of our ancestors experienced. It's only in the last 200 years we've had school. So prior to that, Freddie would have been apprenticing to you. He would have been under your feet all the time, growing up with you
Mm.
all the time, around you all the time, learning your trade as a tailor or a carpenter or whatever, right? Which is how we got those surnames. That's the reality of the life 200 years plus ago. So the lifestyle we've got now is very different. Now we package the kids up. If both parents are working, they're in daycare a lot of the time. They come home, the only time you get to see them is a few hours at night and on weekends.
Mm.
That's extremely different to what a few generations ago experienced. And so we have to adjust, we have to work out what works now, given the underlying principles of how human beings still operate.
Mm.
So just because we say that men and women are equal, it doesn't mean we're the same. We're very different. We've got millions of years of evolution built into us, into our nervous systems, in terms of how our brains are actually structured. All this comes into play in terms of, okay, what decisions do I need to make that actually work now? And that's what I've spent years studying and working out. And myself as the lab rat, but obviously now thousands and thousands of clients and looking at, okay, what actually works? If a client does this give them this result? If a client does that, does that give them the result they don't want? And what you see consistently is there are certain strategies and patterns of behavior that produce the results we want, and there are certain strategies and patterns of behavior that produce exactly what we don't want.
Mm.
And
Okay.
it's working out in these areas outside of work and investment and money, what we need to do to enhance our ability to make those decisions.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's not just about the money. For some people it is, but that's an egoic need. Um, and inevitably you'll suffer at that. I mean, I've read extensively Warren Buffett's life story. And, in the very early years, he was a classic for walking around the house with a board report in his face and ignoring the chaos. That's how he avoided the chaos. Yeah. But his marriage was a train wreck.
Mm.
Clearly, I mean, no woman wants a marriage like that. So his marriage was literally a train wreck. And so, he often talks about now how that cost him and how he's learnt from that to
Yeah.
be much more attentive to the people around him and
Yeah.
to his family.
Yeah.
And so obviously suffered his relationships with his children as well. So, yeah, we can make those early years all about money and those sorts of things. But wisely, as you're doing, we want to learn about these other skills that we have to have as well.
Mm.
And you want to pass on to Freddie and Flossie a good family environment, a good way of knowing what's right and wrong to do, not religiously, but just functionally what's right and wrong to do, that's going to give them what they need.
Mm. Yeah, I think the skills that we've learned from yourself and Marie over the years as well, myself and Joe are solid.
Mm.
There's challenges along the way, as there always is. Nothing's perfect, right? But
Yeah,
having these two kids has definitely thrown in a different dynamic to the relationship.
totally.
And like I say, we love them to bits, but yeah, sometimes these challenges, you're just like, look, it's relentless. Like, when does it stop?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Doesn't. So with the two children I have with Marie, I had four kids previously in a prior marriage, right? So I've had six kids in total. So by the time I got to Marie, and having two more kids, I'd learned the mistakes that I'd made. I'd clearly seen the results of the mistakes that I'd made with the first four and didn't want to make those mistakes again. And that included, when I came home from work, I didn't want it to be chaos, and it had been chaos previously. So it's implementing these types of things that I'm talking about that make it a more enjoyable experience. And
Mm.
there's no doubt that when you have kids, it definitely affects the quality of the relationship because you've got less time together. That in itself has to affect the level of connection that you have. So from the marriage point of view, then you have to allocate time, organize babysitters. And again, that can be an issue, not so much for us, but more for our wives, where they're more like, not so sure I want to leave my two very young children with a babysitter that I don't really know that well. Okay. So that's where we as men have to step up and reassure and go, okay, we'll have the baby monitor on. We can, monitor them whilst we're out, make sure they're all okay. We're only a phone call away. We're only going out to dinner, down the street. We're not that far away. So if there is any issues, and you gradually wean that into your time together. Because
Yeah.
again, if you maintain that, then that becomes a problem. No point in building up all that wealth if you then decide to give 50% or more away.
True. True. Yeah, date nights are solid as well, Brett. We still
Good.
factor them in every week, and 1 week it's in the house, 1 week it's out the house, and we kind of rotate that way as well.
Nice, nice,
Keep
nice.
that
Good work.
repetition and work on the questions that you guys have given us too. We actually got the card in a little card deck that he's made up.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, the date night cards to
yeah,
use.
good.
Yeah, they're good questions, aren't
Yeah, it's good fun. Keeps the relationship interesting when you're asking questions like that.
they? It certainly does. Deeper questions
Yeah,
that perhaps you would normally have in normal conversation.
yeah,
This is the intimacy and connection.
yeah.
So given what I've said to you, what do you think will still be a problem, an issue?
I don't think there will be any problems or issues. Again, it's more somebody showing you something that you can't see that's right in front of your face.
Hmm.
So going in the house, giving my wife the attention that she needs, giving Freddie what he needs, and then giving Flossie what she needs. And she's at that age where she doesn't need a great deal yet, but
No.
she's grown up fast, mate. She's massive already. So yeah, just getting that structure in place so that they're getting what they need. And even when you mentioned the love languages and internally, externally influenced, like my love language is quality time, and so is Freddie's. He loves nothing more than playing with his cars with me, or me sitting down and reading a book with him, or even sitting there and watching Bluey on TV with him.
Yep.
And we can sit there watching Bluey, and I'll think, oh, I'll just leave him there because he looks like he's watching it. And as soon as I stand up, he's onto me, and he
Yep.
just wants to be there. So it's great. You've really helped me notice something that was right in front of me.
Hmm.
Um, and the
And so
mess.
that's great. And I think the next step after that is, he obviously wants your quality time and he likes to spend time with you, which is great. But there are obviously times when dad has to go and do something.
Mm,
So it's really important at those times to say, I really love spending this time with you. Dad has to go and do this thing. When I'm finished, I'll come back, but I have to go and do it. So set him up again, like bedtime routine, that he's aware that you will come back.
Hmm. You think that's where the anxiety comes from? He thinks I'm not going to come back.
I think for some kids that are wired that way, it's more like they see dad leave during the day and he's gone for a long period of time.
Mm. Okay.
So literally, he's missing you. He's missing you.
Yeah.
We all tend to model one parent more than the other. We model both, but it can be, 60-40, it can be 70-30, even 80-20. So it sounds like he's modeling you much more than Joe. We'll obviously take in things from Joe, but like I said before, literally, you're his hero.
Yeah. Warms my heart to know that as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the mess thing, yeah. I mean, we've got cleaners that come through and help out throughout the house, but they're there during the day. And there must be a time period that the house is clean and then the cleaner leaves and he just gets everything back out.
You get to enjoy it. Joe does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to have to step in and handle that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then as they grow, there are different stages they go through. You get to the teenage years and that gradually becomes about letting go. And a lot of parents make a mistake at that point. They're still parenting like the kids are under 10 and they're not letting go. And then you end up with results, from that. Kids can't make decisions. They're not resilient. They get knocked over by something and they can't sort it out themselves. Those sorts of things become critical later on.
Yeah.
But you don't have to worry about that just yet.
Well, but I am cautious of it though, because it's in our awareness because what Joe's like, she's very, very nurturing, very loving, very caring. And
Yes.
she wants to do everything for them constantly.
Yes.
So we do have them discussions to make sure
Yes.
that doesn't happen.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. You need to have that awareness for sure.
Yeah. But this has been good, Coach. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime, as you know.
Cheers. There you have it, guys. Hope you got something from that episode. Like I say, it's a little bit different. Not something that I'd normally be sharing out in public, but I thought there was some little hidden gems and golden nuggets in there that could help anybody wherever they're at if they've got children. So join us again next week on the podcast. And remember, every master was once a disaster. Every winner was once a beginner.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you can stay up to date with all cash flow positive property updates.